September 7th, 1978. London. It is a grey, ordinary evening during rush hour. Commuters are rushing home, heads down against the wind, crossing the concrete span of Waterloo Bridge. Among the crowd is a 49-year-old man named Georgi Markov. He is a writer, an intellectual, and a defector. He fled the communist regime of Bulgaria years ago to find freedom in the West, but he knows he is never truly safe. As he waits at a bus stop on the south side of the bridge, he feels a sharp, sudden, stinging pain in the back of his right thigh. It feels like a bug bite, or perhaps the pinch of a clumsy stranger bumping into him in the crowd. Markov turns around instinctively. He sees a man standing behind him, bending down to pick up an umbrella from the pavement. The man is thick-set, nondescript. He mumbles a quick apology with a foreign accent, hails a taxi, and disappears into the London traffic. Markov thinks nothing of it. He rubs his leg, gets on his bus, and goes home to his wife and daughter. He does not know it yet, but he has just been murdered. The clock is ticking, and he has 3 days left to live. This is not a scene from a James Bond movie. This is the most famous and sophisticated assassination of the Cold War. Welcome to the Shadow Dossier. Today we dissect the mechanics of the umbrella murder. To understand why a man was killed with an umbrella on a London bridge, we must look at the target. Georgi Markov was not a spy. He was not a soldier. He was a voice. And to a dictator, a voice is more dangerous than a gun. In Bulgaria, Markov had been a member of the elite. He was a celebrated novelist who knew the communist leader, Todor Zhivkov, personally. But Markov grew disgusted with the corruption and the hypocrisy of the regime. He defected to Britain and began working for the BBC and Radio Free Europe. Every week, millions of Bulgarians tuned in to hear Markov's broadcasts. He told dirty jokes about the government. He exposed the secret lives of the party leaders. He mocked Todor Zhivkov's vanity and stupidity. He pierced the bubble of the dictator's ego. Zhivkov was furious. He took the broadcasts as a personal insult. He reportedly shouted at his generals, "Stop this man! Silence him!" The Bulgarian Secret Service, the Državna Sigurnost, tried to threaten Markov. They called him, they warned him. But Markov refused to stop speaking, so the order was given to kill him. And to add a twist of cruel irony, Zhivkov wanted it done on his own birthday. September 7th was the dictator's birthday. Markov's death was to be a gift wrapped in silence. But the Bulgarians had a problem. They had tried to kill defectors before and failed. They lacked the technology for a subtle hit. So, the Bulgarian interior minister turned to their big brother. He contacted the KGB in Moscow and asked for help. The request landed on the desk of Yuri Andropov, the head of the KGB. At first, Andropov was reluctant. He did not want the KGB involved in wet work, assassinations, that could be traced back to Moscow. It was bad for détente. But the Bulgarians pleaded. They said it was a matter of national honor. Andropov finally agreed, but with 2 conditions. First, no Soviet agents would carry out the attack. Second, the weapon must be untraceable. It must leave no evidence. The KGB turned to Camera, also known as Laboratory 12. This was the secret research facility that developed poisons and spy gadgets. The scientists at Lab 12 didn't choose a gun. A gun is loud, a gun leaves a bullet, a gun creates panic. They chose biology. They chose ricin. Ricin is a toxin derived from the waste of the castor oil plant. It is twice as deadly as cobra venom. But ricin is tricky. If you swallow it, you might survive. If you inhale it, it's unreliable. To be 100% lethal, it must be injected directly into the bloodstream, and the dose must be precise. The KGB scientists engineered a weapon that was a masterpiece of miniaturization. It wasn't a bullet. It was a pellet. It was a tiny sphere made of 90% platinum and 10% iridium. It was the size of a pinhead, barely 1.7 millimeters in diameter. But the genius was in the design. 2 microscopic holes were drilled into the sphere at right angles, forming an X shape inside. These tiny reservoirs were capable of holding less than a milligram of ricin, just enough to kill 1 man. They sealed the holes with a special sugar-like substance that was designed to melt at human body temperature. The plan was elegant, The pellet enters the body, the sugar melts, the poison is released. The victim dies. Now they needed a delivery system. You cannot walk up to a man and inject him with a syringe without a struggle. They needed to shoot the pellet, but a gun creates a muzzle flash and a bang. So the KGB tech wizards modified a standard umbrella. It wasn't a firearm in the traditional sense. It was a pneumatic weapon. Hidden in the tip of the umbrella was a gas cylinder and a firing mechanism. The trigger was concealed in the handle. The agent would walk up to the target. He would press the umbrella tip against the victim's leg. When he pulled the trigger, compressed gas would fire the pellet silently. The recoil was masked by the accidental bump. The Bulgarians found their assassin. His code name was Piccadilly. He is believed to be Francesco Gullino, an Italian-Danish dealer in antiques who worked as a mercenary spy. Back in London, hours after the sting on the bridge, Georgi Markov began to feel ill. He developed a high fever. He started vomiting. His wife called a doctor, but the symptoms looked like a severe flu or food poisoning. By the next morning, Markov was in agony. His white blood cell count skyrocketed. He was rushed to St. James's Hospital. He told the doctors about the man on the bridge. He told them, "I have been poisoned by the communists." The doctors were skeptical. They couldn't find a wound. The puncture mark on his thigh was so small, it looked like a pimple. They treated him for sepsis. They gave him massive doses of antibiotics. But antibiotics do not stop ricin. Ricin works by entering the cells and preventing them from making proteins. It essentially turns off the machinery of life, cell by cell. Markov's organs began to fail. His heart, his kidneys, his lungs. He slipped into a coma. On September 11th, 4 days after the attack, Georgi Markov died. To the world it looked like a natural death, a sudden infection, a tragedy, the perfect crime. But Georgi Markov had one final move to make. He had insisted to everyone that he was attacked. Because of his claims, the coroner ordered a thorough autopsy. They focused on the small red inflammation on his thigh. They cut out a block of tissue around the mark and sent it to the government's chemical defense establishment at Porton Down. The scientists at Porton Down examined the tissue under a microscope. They saw nothing. Then, they used a magnet. Nothing happened. Platinum and iridium are not magnetic. It seemed like a dead end. But then they looked closer. They found the tiny metal sphere embedded deep in the flesh. When they put it under an electron microscope, they saw the 2 drilled holes. They realized this was not a piece of shrapnel. This was a manufactured object. It was a container. And it was empty. The realization sent shockwaves through British intelligence. They had found the bullet, but where was the poison? They ruled out radiation. They ruled out bacteria. They eventually deduced it must be ricin based on the symptoms and the tiny volume. The police launched a massive investigation. They interviewed hundreds of people. They reconstructed the scene on the bridge. But the trail was cold. The assassin, Piccadilly, had left the country the morning after the attack. The umbrella murder became a global sensation. It was terrifying because it was so mundane. An umbrella, a bus stop, a commuter. It brought the paranoia of the spy world into the daily life of every Londoner. Todor Zhivkov got his birthday present. Markov was dead. But the assassination backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing Markov, the murder made him a martyr. His books were read by millions. His voice became louder in death. The KGB was furious that the pellet had been found. They blamed the Bulgarians for their sloppy execution. They had expected the pellet to be buried with the body, never to be discovered. For years, the communists denied everything. They called it a Western propaganda fantasy. But when the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, the truth began to leak out of the archives in Sofia. Journalists and investigators rushed to the Bulgarian Secret Service headquarters. They wanted the Markov file, but they were too late. A few days before the government fell, the Bulgarian spy chief, General Vladimir Todorov, had panicked. He gathered the files on the Markov assassination, volumes of planning, logistics, and payments. He took them to a boiler room and burned them. The paper trail turned to ash. However, not everything was lost. A few documents survived in other archives. They confirmed the cooperation with the KGB. They confirmed the existence of the special means weapons. In 1992, a former KGB general, Oleg Kalugin, publicly admitted that the KGB had provided the poison and the technology. He confirmed that Andropov had personally authorized the technical assistance. Investigators eventually identified the prime suspect, Francesco Gullino. He was interrogated in 1993. He admitted he was a Bulgarian agent. He admitted he was in London on that day. But he denied being the killer. Because the weapon was never found and the files were burned, there was not enough evidence to charge him. He walked free. He reportedly sold his story to the press and disappeared into obscurity. The legacy of the poison umbrella is one of chilling ingenuity. It showed the world that intelligence agencies were operating without moral limits. It wasn't just about stealing secrets. It was about execution. The umbrella gun itself has become an icon of spycraft, a symbol of the banality of evil. It proved that death could touch you anywhere, in a crowd, on a bridge, with a simple poke. Today, the tiny platinum pellet is on display in the Black Museum of Scotland Yard. It sits in a small plastic box. It looks insignificant, a speck of dust. But that speck of dust represents the full weight of a totalitarian state crashing down on one man. It represents the fear of a dictator who trembled at the sound of a writer's voice. Scientists have since calculated that the dose used to kill Markov was almost theoretically perfect. If the pellet had been slightly smaller, he might have lived. If the shot had hit a bone, the poison might not have dispersed. It was a lucky shot for the assassin. Or perhaps a testament to the deadly precision of Lab 12. Ironically, a similar attack was attempted 10 days earlier on another Bulgarian defector in Paris, Vladimir Kostov. He was shot in the back with a similar pellet while leaving a metro station. But the angle was wrong. The pellet didn't penetrate deep enough. The sugar coating didn't melt fully. Kostov got a fever, but he survived. It was only after Markov died that Kostov went to a doctor and had his back x-rayed. They found the same platinum pellet. It was the smoking gun that proved a systematic campaign. The assassination of Georgi Markov changed the rules of engagement. It embarrassed the KGB and forced them to scale back such brazen operations in the West. But the technology didn't disappear. It just evolved. From ice darts to umbrella tips to radioactive tea and nerve agents on door handles. The delivery systems change, but the message remains the same. We can reach you. Georgi Markov's grave in Dorset, England, has a simple inscription. Georgi Markov died for the cause of freedom. He didn't die in a battle or a bombing raid. He died waiting for a bus. But his death revealed the true face of the Cold War. It wasn't a game of chess, it was a knife fight in the dark, where the only rule was survival. This concludes the file on the poison umbrella. We have explored the silent killers and the technological terrors, but sometimes assassination is not subtle. Sometimes it is not about hiding. It is about sending a message to the whole world. Next time, we open the file on the most brutal revenge mission in history. When 11 Israeli athletes were massacred at the Munich Olympics, the Israeli Prime Minister, Golda Meir, made a decision. She didn't want arrests. She didn't want a trial. She wanted the terrorists dead. She authorized a secret unit of the Mossad to hunt them down, one by one, across Europe and the Middle East. This was not justice. This was the wrath of God. Next file. Operation Wrath of God.